It was a debate, but hardly what you'd call presidential. No handshake at the outset as the candidates went for the jugular in the second of three face-offs between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Everything from effectively painting Trump as a racist, sexist bigot to the Republican blasting and threatening to throw Hillary Clinton into jail. In fact, the blows began before even the town hall-style encounter had even started. 1 hour before the main event, Donald Trump countering the shock of a 2005 video about how he sees women with a so-called press conference with women who accuse Bill Clinton of being a rapist and a sexual predator. This follows a weekend when many a senior Republican disavowed their party's candidate. Here's the novelty, though. The man at the top of the ticket doesn't really seem to care. Polls suggest Trump is losing ground on Clinton, but how reliable are those polls in an election year unlike any other, one where rage against the elites has already resulted on this side of the Atlantic in Brexit? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the low road to the White House. With us from Philadelphia, Michael Johns, co-founder of the National Tea Party movement who works with the Heritage Foundation. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
From Southampton, New York, Lauren Leader-Chevy, co-founder and CEO of All In Together. Welcome.
Thank you.
We'll be joined later from New York by Rich Benjamin, senior fellow at the progressive think tank Demos Action, author of Searching for Witopia. And with us here, he's a contributor to the French edition of the Huffington Post, Soufiane Adsabag, author of The New American Right.
Good evening.
Nice to see you. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Vitriol sells. Sunday night's debate in St. Louis, the most tweeted event ever. But the entertainment value inversely proportional to the substance, say critics.
But Bill Clinton was abusive to women. Hillary Clinton attacked those same women.
Everything he just said is absolutely false, but I'm not surprised.
Really? She's got tremendous hatred.
Please allow her to respond. She didn't talk while you talked.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Okay, Donald, I know you're into big diversion tonight, anything to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you.
There has never been so many lies, so much deception. There has never been anything like it.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
All right, before we go to our panel, he was up close to watch the fur fly. Correspondent Philip Crowther, who attended last night's debate in St. Louis. Gosh, Philip, I look at those exchanges. I wonder, what's the third debate going to be like?
Yeah, it could potentially be even worse. 9 days to go to the very last debate that will be held in Las Vegas. And we know from what we've seen from Donald Trump and from what his team has been saying that he, first of all, will be staying in this race, despite those many calls for him to drop out after that video with the lewd comments about women first surfaced. But we also know that he'll be going, as you say, for the jugular. This could get dirtier and dirtier and uglier and uglier. Just yesterday was an example because of the guests that he brought to the second debate in St. Louis and the state of Missouri. He brought 4 women with him. 3 of them accused Bill Clinton, the former president and the husband, of course, of the Democratic nominee, of sexual assault. This is a race that has really got down into the gutter, and we can't really see it getting much better. And where I am, by the way, this is Ferguson, Missouri. This is just about a 10-minute drive from St. Louis, where the debate was held. And of course, this is a place that is famous for the riots from 2 years ago. And people here, and more than anything, African Americans who I've spoken to, are just not enthusiastic. Now, that is really important because Hillary Clinton is supposed to have that African American vote pretty much sewn up for her, but so many people I've spoken to are just not enthusiastic about this election, and most of them didn't even watch the debate. There are record viewing figures, yes, but there are many of these key demographics, as they're sometimes called, who simply did not switch on. This is an election that has people disgusted and turning away.
Yeah, so it brings us to the question of the polls, Philip, because on the one hand, Hillary Clinton seems to be pulling away. On the other, you're describing a situation where she's perhaps having more trouble than her rival in energizing her base.
Well, this is something that we just see here on the ground. When you speak to people, they just are very, very enthusiastic. And so many people I've spoken to today are still undecided. They dislike both presidential candidates, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Though these are absolute extremes, these two candidates for the presidency in 2016, there are so many Americans who can't make up their mind between the two. And the sentence that comes back again and again is that they will choose the lesser of two evils. It looks like it right now, according to the polls, that the lesser of those two evils will, in the minds of American voters, be Hillary Clinton. Because the latest polls we have actually come from before the release of that video that put Donald Trump under so much pressure over the last few days. And those polls already showed Hillary Clinton ahead, first of all, nationally. That is a good symbol, but doesn't decide the election. But she's also ahead in the battleground states, in the so-called swing states of Ohio, for example, of Pennsylvania and Florida, those crucial states. So the road to the White House looks relatively clear right now for Hillary Clinton. But what I tend to remember is the Brexit vote in the United Kingdom, where pretty much all the polls indicated that the United Kingdom would remain in the European Union, but the polls were wrong in the end. That could happen here in the United States, but it seems unlikely.
Seems unlikely. A cautious Philip Crowther reporting for us from the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson, Missouri. Many thanks for that. Let me get your reaction, Lauren Leader-Chevy. You see the polls, but you also see the lack of enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton. Could we have a Brexit-style surprise?
No, we're not going to have a Brexit-style surprise. It's not even close. First of all, we have an electoral college in this country, which is one of the reasons why it's not close. The path for any Republican coming into this race was already disadvantaged because the fundamental electoral map in this country favors any Democrat who runs for president. That was certainly the case in terms of 2012. It becomes even more of an issue in 2016 because the only way that Republicans actually redeem that map is by winning a majority of women and of people of color, which from the outset has been a massive problem for Donald Trump. He has had a 70-point gender gap since the beginning of the general election cycle. That clearly is not getting better. And the reality is that American women turn American elections. They are more likely to be registered to vote and more likely to turn out to vote than any other demographic group. So all of the media noise about enthusiasm, not enthusiasm, I can promise you, one way or another, American women are going to decide this election, and the gender gap is so substantial, it's almost impossible to imagine how Donald Trump redeems himself. So even at the just fundamentals of the basic map, without even winning all of the swing states, any Democrat running for president is already at an advantage. With her up now in places like Ohio, which frankly I do think still could go back for Trump, I think it's certainly possible that she loses Ohio, but if she wins Virginia, she wins Pennsylvania, Florida, even without winning all of the swing states, she's at 270. It's not going to be close.
Michael Johns, it's not going to be close there.
I think that the outcome of this election is yet to be determined. You have a really important month left. I thought Trump did exceptionally well last night on all fronts, on a political front, in raising a lot of Hillary Clinton's deficiencies, and also on a policy front, I think, in addressing in more concrete ways how he is going to right the economy of the United States and secure the country. And I think the lack of enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton is significant, and it's understandable because it's very difficult to articulate what this woman stands for at this point. I mean, she's sort of, supported the TPP trade partnership. She now opposes it. She opposed single-payer systems. Now she's for it. She, was against the Buckeye Pipeline, now is sort of who, maybe possibly supportive. I mean, it's really, I think the American people see within this woman just a complete, calculating, somewhat ruthlessly ambitious person who wants the positional authority, but has very little in the way of remedy for the issues that are affecting the American people. And that's in large part why there is such unjustifiable enthusiasm for Trump's candidacy.
Enthusiasm among a small base. You just heard Lauren Leader-Chevy say that women are going to decide this election. An ABC poll shows 62% of women less likely to vote for Trump after the election. Meanwhile, 55% of the men say this won't make any difference. Where Trump was at his weakest was at the start of the debate, when he was pressed on that leaked tape from 2005.
Are you saying that what you said on that bus 11 years ago, that you did not actually kiss women without consent or grope women without consent?
I have great respect for women. Nobody has more respect for women than I do.
So for the record, you're saying you never did that?
I said things that, frankly, you hear these things are said, and I was embarrassed by it, but I have tremendous respect for women.
Have you ever done those things?
Women have respect for me.
Soufiane Al-Sabag, is that going to convince women? Nobody has more respect for women than I do?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. You have 53% of the electorate that are women. And from the very start, you've seen Donald Trump attacking women's rights, basic rights. I'm not even talking about, advocating for women's cause, whatever, just being respectful. That's what it is. And Donald Trump has not been able to do that even. And as our commentator said, I think, it's all about the Electoral College. Since 1992, the Democrats have been carrying every single time 18 states plus the District of Columbia. That makes up 242 electoral votes. What this means is Hillary Clinton today just needs Florida, and she's over the top. That's it. We don't need Ohio. They don't need Virginia. They don't need North Carolina. So, and I think it shows a lot about what the Republican Party today is. I mean, it's so extreme that it can't even convince the center of the electorate, and it's going to cost them this election. It cost them the last election and the two previous ones, actually. And it's probably going to be the same in 2020 if they go down the same path.
Michael Johns, that tape from 2005 seems to be a tipping point inside the Republican Party. We've seen this Monday Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who says he's not going to campaign with Trump over the next 30 days. Instead, he's going to try to salvage the Republicans' lead in Congress. What's your reaction to that?
Trump has run against the GOP establishment from the very beginning. Paul Ryan was never an enthusiastic supporter of Trump, so his backing away at this juncture is really not terribly consequential. He doesn't have a national political following and base of support like Trump has. And part of Trump's popularity is rooted in the fact that there is such overwhelming frustration within the country and among Republicans and independents about the lack of leadership that's been provided by exactly the types of people like Paul Ryan in Congress, who really have done very little at the end of the day to oppose the Obama agenda. So I think it's entirely inconsequential. It's consequential.
It may be inconsequential, but let me ask you, because you just heard two of our panelists say that Trump has lost the women's vote.
Well, firstly, one thing I think that's important to observe is that among the liberal democratic thinking, they think in terms of demographics, of the women's vote, the African-American vote, the Hispanic vote. I think increasingly, and this is not, I think among Republicans, every issue is a woman's issue. They're concerned about job creation. They're concerned about security. They're concerned about not being knifed on the street by jihadists. They're concerned about the American prestige and credibility and power in the world. They're concerned about education. On none of these issues is really Hillary Clinton speaking to them in any way that's persuasive. And I don't think that the idea of having the first woman president is all that persuasive either. I think any woman who's grown up in the late 20th century or early 21st century in the United States is acutely aware that a woman can do anything within the United States. And we will one day have a female president. I don't believe it's going to be Hillary Clinton.
Lauren Leadershivy, your reaction?
Amazingly fantastical thinking. I got to just say, look, this is heartbreaking for the Republican Party. I actually do believe in a strong two-party system. This is absolutely unprecedented. The extent to which not just Republican leaders like Paul Ryan, who you certainly could argue has equivocated on this front, but huge majorities of mainstream Republicans across the country, many of whom I work with extensively on a regular basis, are absolutely appalled that this man is representing their party. It is bad for the Republican Party and it's bad for our democracy. Keep in mind, please, that in the year 2000 and again in 2004, part of the reason why George W. Bush won and won effectively was that he actually did sincerely and meaningfully understand that you cannot win and you cannot govern on one tiny, narrow demographic of this country. We are a diverse nation, and within a generation, we will be a minority-majority nation. George W. Bush actually won a majority of women. He did extraordinarily well, not just with women in his own party, but even women who crossed lines to support him because of his compassion and his values. The same thing was true of Hispanics. He won about 40% of the Hispanic vote. So when candidates actually do reach out and embrace the reality of who Americans are today, they do extraordinarily well. And that has nothing to do with party. That has nothing to do with red states and blue states. That has to do with respecting the fundamentals of who our nation really is today. And our nation is no longer just represented by a tiny, narrow demographic of straight white men, which is why it is not going to be a close election, whatever the Trump surrogates would like to say. And I know they like to paint, to go after Hillary at every possible turn. That is completely fair game to go after her in terms of policy. But the reality is that they have a candidate, unfortunately, and I take no pleasure in this. They have a candidate who is indefensible, whose behavior has scraped the absolute bottom of the barrel in terms of acceptability, of decency, and fundamentally doesn't understand actually some of the most basic policy issues facing our country. He last night denied the policy position of his own running mate, saying that he had not even spoken to him about it. He also then defended Russia, who many experts are now saying has been consistently hacking the United States. I mean, the list of appalling really is long and continues to get longer. And Americans understand this. And Americans, by the way, on both sides of the aisle, this election is going to see record numbers of Republicans either not supporting their own candidate or crossing lines. And even with the challenges of a candidate like Hillary, who is not perfect, I absolutely don't think she's a perfect candidate. But even in that environment that so many Republicans are abandoning their standard bearer, it's unprecedented. And it speaks to how incredibly bad their candidate is this time around.
All right, when we come back, we'll get the feedback from Rich Benjamin, the author of Searching for Whitopia, an improbable journey to the heart of white America. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.